Hello, friends. I want to talk about the man box. I've been asked about this quite a bit, and so I want to talk about it and make 3 points about it, and hopefully this will be helpful in your community conversations, in your schools, and in your homes. The concept itself, I want to look at that and where the concept comes from and how it's useful and how it's not useful. Number two, I want to talk about masculinity, what masculinity really is, and what's happening with the whole toxic masculinity part of our culture conversation right now. And then number three, I want to talk about the specific aspects of male development that are crucial, and that if we don't provide them, they are the real causes of the male violence that we see. First of all, the man box. It's the idea, as you may know, that we should not be teaching boys to be strong. We should not be teaching them to be tough. We should not be teaching them to be respected, to be dominant, because these put them in a box, and it's a gender stereotype and a culture norm. And if we do that, they'll be in this box, and that will be harmful for them. And then ultimately, they'll harm others because of this man box. I'm going to disagree with that. I certainly get where this comes from. It's feminist sociology. It started 50 to 60 years ago. It's a valuable concept, as is the wealth of feminist sociology. It's very valuable, but it's a culture concept. It attempts to say that a culture, a cultural approach, and an old cultural approach, let's say, from that point of view, that can somehow cause males to become violent, that can cause males to be in distress, to fail out of school, etc. That I would argue with. That I don't think we can get any proof for, even though the concept is an interesting one. Number two, I would go in another direction. I would say that masculinity, which is what's getting attacked here, right? The man box is saying that masculinity is defective, and then it's extrapolating that to toxic masculinity. Masculinity itself is not defective. Teaching boys to be strong is good. It's fine. Teaching boys to be a man is good. Teaching boys to man up is good. Teaching boys to be tough is good. Teaching girls to be tough is good, right? It's a tough world. We've got to teach kids to be strong. We've got to teach them to be tough. We've got to teach them to work toward being respected and to be respected. That's crucial for all children. And we would have no argument about this if we were talking about my daughters or your daughters, but it gets weird when we talk about boys, and yet it's absolutely what we have to teach them. We have to teach them to compete, and sometimes that means be dominant, but we have to teach them to compete. At the same time, of course, masculinity is a rich, rich approach to life, and it is not just about being strong, tough, respected, and dominant. It's also about being vulnerable. It's about being tender. It's about being humble. It's about learning to lose, right? That's really, so my second point is that's really what masculinity is. And this thing we've done where we've said, well, all masculinity really is teaching them to be tough. That's bad. And that's a man box. All of this got kind of coalesced, and we have to separate these concepts and understand that in fact the best research shows us that it's the lack of the father, it's the lack of the masculine that is one of the worst things you can do to boys. That's more in the causal area. So it's not too much masculinity; it's too little masculinity that harms these guys. Obviously, masculinity, like femininity, like anything, can get taken too far. But masculinity itself is not defective. There's a rich masculinity that we all are trying to teach our sons, and it involves being strong and tough and respected, and it involves being tender, obviously, and empathic. The third point I want to make is that when we look at what kids need, we can see what they don't get, and we can see where violence comes from. Male violence does not come from a man box. Male violence comes from three primary causal agents on the brain. Number one, neurotoxins and environmental neurotoxins, which are attacking the brains of both males and females. And with males, the disease of violence is much more severe than it is with females when the cells are attacked. Number two, trauma. Nearly every male who becomes violent has been significantly traumatized. So trauma And number three, a lack of attachment. It's sometimes lack of attachment with mom. Generally, though, statistically, it's more lack of attachment with dad and with male role models. Those are the three primary causes of male violence. And the way that they link to violence is that they create depression. And male spectrum depression is more likely to become violent than female for a number of neurobiological reasons. So when males become depressed, more males are likely to fight or flight, and some are likely to fight and become violent, and many are likely to withdraw and simply hide out in basements and play video games. So male depression is a significant factor right now. It is not caused by teaching boys to be tough, and that doesn't cause depression. Depression is caused by a number of other factors, these three being primary, and then they lead to violence. So ultimately, what I would beg people to do is look at the man box concept and say, okay, good concept. We know where that came from. We know that feminist sociology needed us to move out of the past, and it needed to associate masculinity and patriarchy and all of that together and condemn it. And we get that. It was an important time in history. It's an important concept and it continues to be. But it's not causation, and we need to look at other causes or we will not solve the problems we have. And we got to remember, we've had 50 years of this man box concept. We've had schools go through trainings and neighborhoods and churches and universities and everyone go through all this to say, well, we got to stop teaching boys to be strong and tough. And we're getting more violence than we have had before. So let's go beyond it. Let's respect it, but go beyond it and look at the neuroscience. That would be what I beg you to do. Thanks a lot.